You have no right to someone else's body. Don't be confused, friends. You haven't accidentally stumbled onto a social justice warrior channel. It's still me. But that statement is true. You and I and everyone else on this planet has no right to the body of another person. I don't care if it's okay in your religion or your religion. You still don't get to own people. Now, some of you might be saying, no fucking shit, Aiden, why are you telling us this? Well, folks, because apparently actual social justice types just don't get this. Despite all their crying and screaming about rape, there is this strange trend of leftists claiming that a lack of attraction to a person's body is now a pseudo-crime, if not an outright hate crime. That's right, social justice warriors who think that slavery is the worst thing that ever happened, to the point where the grandchildren of slaves are still kept down because of slavery. Yes, they are the ones essentially claiming they have a right to control your body and how you feel. I hope this will be a short video because I find this topic fundamentally absurd, yet it does seem to be a growing one. So I feel I need to state my opinion on it, as well as my general opinion on issues such as transgender rights and fat acceptance. Actually, you know what? Maybe that's a good place to start. My opinions on those topics. So let's start with the easy one, shall we? Fat acceptance. First of all, no. Unlike everything else that gets covered under the concept of, quote, if I don't want to fuck a person because something about their body doesn't make me horny, then I'm a bigot.
And you will really find that with people who have like weird, strict rules about the kind of body type that they want to be with. Any guy or girl who doesn't want to date you because of your body is just out of the picture, and consider it a blessing that you didn't have to go through that in any sort of emotionally invested way.
Fat cannot even be considered in one of those sort of categories. Why? Because being fat is completely the fault of the individuals as adults. It is completely their prerogative to be and continue to be fat. I keep that adult stipulation though, because as a child, obviously, you don't feed yourself. Typically. And as such, if your dad is Randy Bobandy and feeds you nothing but cheeseburgers, the American way, for every meal of every day, yeah, sorry, them's just the shit breaks. And yes, that sucks, and that really sucks for teenagers growing up in that environment. But amazingly, all you need to do to stop being fat is stop eating so much. Okay, so I'll reveal a little bit about myself here. Please don't judge me. Just kidding, I don't fucking care if you do. I really find black women attractive. I think they're very pretty. Well, not all, obviously, but I do find black women attractive. Actually, I even find typical African features like broader noses and thicker lips and big booties to enhance their beauty. Yes, I like pretty brown ladies. They're nothing short of eye candy in my opinion. Anyway, my point in bringing that even up is because a black woman can't change her skin color. A fat person can. Yes, you can, even if you have hypothyroidism. Steven Crowder has hypothyroidism. Have you ever looked at that guy? That's my point. My other point is this, and let's go back to the implicit associations test, which I've mentioned in the past, a test which I've also talked about being used sort of frequently to supposedly measure racism. Yet it's incredibly terrible at doing that by virtue of testing the wrong thing. This is called a failure of internal validity. What the test actually shows is how quickly one reacts to stimuli based on cognitive heuristics, aka mental shortcuts. By the way, a failure of internal validity is a complete catastrophe, as the test is not measuring what it claims to measure. Oftentimes we have failures of external validity, which means I can do this in a lab, but I can't replicate it in the real world. That's a different problem. A failure of internal validity is a total failure of the instrumentation. Unfortunately, shit instrumentation is hard to get rid of because people get used to using the same instruments over and over again, so particularly when they're widely used, people just keep using them. Take the narrative transportation scale, take it too, take that and the implicit associations test, just fucking take them. The narrative transportation instrument is supposed to measure how much people feel they are inside a piece of media, yet instead, what the test measures is how much people like a piece of media. Have you ever felt like you were inside a movie or a TV show or a book? That is the concept of transportation. It has nothing to do with enjoyment. For example, I have read and reread the end of The Witcher several times and I cry every time. I'm certainly not having a good time, but I feel like I'm there. I'm there in that Rivian Squares. Fuck, I'm way off topic, aren't I? Oh god, where was I? Oh right, to the implicit associations test and my admiration for brown women. As I've mentioned, I grew up in Baltimore City, which is something like 75 to 80% black. All my classmates were black, and most of my friends were black. Gee, implicit associations test, maybe that might be part of the reason why I find black ladies attractive. Not like I don't like white ladies. Fuck, this video is going to permanently label me as a lesbian, isn't it? Look, I'm just talking about beauty. I'm just talking about beauty, dinguses. Anyway, a large part of me bringing that whole bit up that I just wasted a bunch of time rambling on about is because I think that's probably how it works for fat people. If you were raised in a fat family, you're probably going to be more likely to find other tubbies attractive. Similarly, if you're black and you have a black family, you'll probably find other black women attractive. Or if you're like me and you grow up in a city that's mostly black, you might find black people attractive. Or just pretty. Again, it's just a beauty thing, okay? It's just a beauty thing. Anyway, moving on. There's this thought process within the communication sciences called the birds of a feather effect. That's Berger and Calabrese 1975, which works off the framework of uncertainty reduction theory. The basics of uncertainty reduction theory are this, that we as humans always seek to decrease our confusion and uncertainty regarding social interactions. This makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary standpoint because you want to be fairly certain that Grog isn't going to beat you over the head with his club, right? The theory has been more recently updated to include uncertainty management, which means sometimes we actually don't want to know more about a social interaction. We want to increase our uncertainty because there are some particular detriments to the social interaction that make us want to be more clueless. I.e., your wife is cucking you, but you don't want to know you're being cucked. As such, you don't ask too many questions about why the milkman visits 5 times a day. Anyway, this birds of a feather effect means that people like being around those who look and act similarly to them because it reduces their uncertainty and fear of aberrant behavior. And it's more than just that. White, 1980, states that people generally want to be with those on their same level of attraction. And sorry, fatties, but being obese is unhealthy, and very few people who aren't also fat are going to be into you. And part of that has to do with the birds of a feather effect as much as it has to do with matching. Matching means 10s marry 10s, 4s marry 4s, and 1s remove themselves from the gene pool. Sorry lads, there's a reason for that, and it's called social exchange theory, which dictates that we're all looking for the best possible outcome from our romantic partner, be that social, financial, romantic, etc. However, there is a caveat to that, and it's called equity. And equity, friends, goes all ways. Research on social exchange theory in romantic relationships indicates that if one partner provides much more than the other, the relationship tends to fall apart. For example, matching doesn't always work or make sense when we're talking about a billionaire octogenarian and his 20-year-old supermodel wife. They could potentially both be very happy with that arrangement because despite these incredibly disparate levels of physical attraction, both are getting something out of their relationship. It doesn't just mean that one person over-providing will get tired of the relationship. It's actually possible for the partner under-providing to become bored and to terminate because of the lack of equity. As anecdotal as this is, it certainly happened to a friend of mine. She dated this guy who lived on her couch and borrowed thousands of dollars from her, and yet he was the one to end the relationship. There is honestly an incredible wealth of information on the topic of communication and interpersonal relationships that I'm not even prepared to even start to get into. I don't teach interpersonal. I am terrible with human relationships. That's why they put me in the lab. Anyway, so back on point. Yeah, most people aren't into fatties. You know what else? Sorry, but most men aren't attracted to trans women with dicks, just as most gay men aren't attracted to boys with pussies. Similarly, well, actually a little bit more likely because women do have a proclivity towards bisexuality from an evolutionary standpoint, there are certainly less both straight and lesbian women who are either into a lady with a cock or a man with a vagina. That all comes down to a lot of factors, but you know what the primary one is, folks? That's what you want to fucking do with your fucking genitals, you goddamn retards. If you're a man and you want to put your PP in the vajuju, then you're not going to have any interest in a male to female trans person who hasn't had the lower body surgery. And by the way, I don't blame people for not also being into sex with post-op transgender people because, sorry, sometimes that surgery looks a bit fucked. God damn it, I'm coming off as a complete asshole here, aren't I? Look, this is why I didn't want to rush into the trans thing first and start with fatties because that's easier. easier. Listen, there is neurological, scientific data that a trans woman's brain, that Blair White's brain, looks and behaves more like my brain than it does a man's. Oh god, the concept that male and female brains are the same thing is one of the most repugnant bits of pseudoscience I've ever heard, but yes, Blair White, as well as all trans women who have dysphoria, as well as trans men, they have mental layouts within their brains that look more like the gender they identify as than their biological sex. That's why I understand transgenderism, because there's science behind it. Now, there's no fucking science behind this whole third gender, bigender, whatever shit. That's just made up fantasyland bullshit. It's because there is a quantifiable and demonstrable difference in their brains. If you have bipolar disorder, as I do, then your brain chemistry is vastly different from a normal brain. You need medicine to help stabilize it. If you have gender dysphoria, your neural structures and processes are different from a normal brain. I don't have a fit over the word normal. I'm not going to use the word cis. I just use it to refer to my own fucked up head, so get over it. Now, this is going to be a controversial statement, for some I guess, but here's what I think needs to happen, and I think it needs to be said, and that's this. I think that the way we treat people with this neurological issue by mutilating their bodies and their genitals and by permanently sterilizing them is nothing short of barbarism. Let's say I have a spinal problem. You don't fix it by removing my spine and replace it with an L-shaped block instead of an S. And I say that as someone with some very, very close trans friends, because I have seen the suffering they go through. I've seen it. I've seen the pain. I've seen the self-hatred. And I ask, God, why? Why did you make them like this? It's tragic, it truly is. However, none of that means you are entitled to someone's attraction or sexual desire. No matter how much pain you go through, no matter how much you cry about being trans, no matter how much you cry about being fat, you do not get to own people. Isn't this astounding that this needs to be said to liberals? You know, the people who absolutely hate slavery so much? Guess what, libtards? You do not get to own people. Anyway, do I wish we could have just given a pill to Blair White to help her not experience dysphoria without massive physical alteration? Sure, although she's pretty cute, so maybe it is a force for good. But until we can figure out how to actually cure gender dysphoria, this is what we have. And it's besetting because the surgeries that they all go through, which are massive and very expensive, it doesn't really affect the suicide rates. And that's another reason why I'm so concerned with this. So what I want to talk about now is fetishists and how they have become pariahs among these groups. First of all, beyond the fat guys with fat families, as I've mentioned, most men aren't into fat chicks. Similarly, fat chicks with fat families are probably more likely to be into fatter dudes. Me, I like the lumberjack type.
I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. I sleep all night, I work all day. He's a lumberjack and he's okay. He sleeps all night and he works all day.
Anyway, beyond those naturally into these things based on their familiarity or their birds of a feather effect dispositions, the people who are mostly going to be into fatties and trannies with their original genitals are probably going to be fetishists. Yet, for some reason, both groups despise these people.
So then, I'll beg the question. Why are fat women so over-sexualized? One reason may be that fat women often have larger breasts, which are downright fetishized in our culture. But another reason may be that fat women are othered, made to feel different, to exist in a separate societal box. This makes them into a forbidden fruit dangling just out of reach.
Look, I get it. I get the concept that it is upsetting and devaluing to only be found attractive for something physical about your body, except, you fucking morons, that's how the rest of the world procreates! Maybe it's rude that these people are only into fatties or only into traps, but so what? They're entire groups of people who are into you exclusively, and all you have to do is respond to their advances. As a long-term partner, that might suck. I can certainly imagine that it would. I've had people weirdly worship me and follow me around for my cosplay, and yeah, that's really weird, I get it. But if you're just looking for a lay, why are you offended by these folks? Still, I don't understand this hatred of fetishists who are into trannies and tubbies. They find your body attractive for what it is, so what's your problem? Do you know what it's like as a plain Jane, terrible at talking to people and riddled with social anxiety? Actually, it's been okay, it's been cool. But I'll say this, I've never been asked out once in my life, not once. I have had to ask out every single one of my boyfriends only to always, every single time, be met with, "Oh wow, I always liked you, but you seemed so reserved, I thought you were a bitch." Fucking fat rights, fucking trans rights. How about resting bitch face rights, you goddamn bigots? Those of us with RBF need love too. Moving on. So Riley Dennis, or whatever the fuck his name is, did a video that everyone has covered a few months ago, so I'm not going to say too much about it, other than and yes, Riley is a he is a straight man pretending to be trans so he can get brownie points and get a few female fetishists to screw him, like Milo, not Neonopolis, the little gnome. He basically claims in this video that it is bigotry to not choose to date someone who is transgender, fat, or disabled. Yeah, now, while I have seen many people cover this video, so many that I don't even know who I would link as a good additional source. Andy Worski always tears this guy up, so he's probably a good one. I'll probably just throw something in the video here, or in the description. But what I haven't seen anyone really do is respond to Riley's response, so we're going to go over that. Okay, so Riley insists he is not in support of conversion therapy. You know what to do, Mike. Have you guys seen these Mike Pence memes where they have a little I love it. Oh, where was I? Anyway, Riley says he's saying that not everyone needs to date trans people. But Riley, that is exactly what you said in your video. You said if you wouldn't date a trans person, you're a really bad dude. He is apparently now saying we need to just recognize our biases, aka flagellate ourselves at the altar of transgenderism and social justice. While he claims he doesn't hate those who don't want to date trans people, who don't pass, haven't had the full reassignment surgery, or that they're just not into, he claims you have to consider your own biases. Let's examine what that actually means. In other words, he is claiming you, yes you, have internal biases against trans people for not wanting to fuck them. He goes on to say that he doesn't want you anywhere near him if you would dare find a trans person ugly, and that you are 100% a bigot if you would ever say you would never date a trans woman with a dick. Yes, that means as a straight man, if you would never date a person with a dick, you're a bigot. Sorry, Riley, but if a dude is into pussies, he doesn't want a banana on his sundae, you ignorant bint. Then he says some shit that no one ever asked, I don't care. Here he is claiming that preferences are discriminatory, but it's not your fault if you were raised a filthy fucking Jew-hating KKK Grand Wizard racist, as I'm sure Riley feels applies to 99% of Americans. Now, here, Riley talks about how he is a non-binary, gender-fluid woman who only likes to fuck women. As an extra attempt to make it clear he is a straight man parading as a, quote, lesbian woman to disarm women from being around him. Save Milo, guys, save her. She's in so much danger. Come on, guys, I don't even have the data on this, but you've seen this shit in real life. Some guy pretends to be gay to attract women who will view him as harmless, all for the purpose of sticking it to them, literally and figuratively. That is the encyclopedia entry on Riley Dennis. A straight man trying to stick it to women by pretending to be something other than a straight man. So here Riley says you can be attracted to whoever you want, but wait a minute, no you can't, because when you don't want to fuck literally every trans, fat, or disabled person, you are hurting them. Hurting them how, Riley? Physically? Emotionally? How am I hurting them? I wish I could go into like a Fantastic Voyage-esque adventure into Riley's brain and just see how many neurons are firing in there. You know, what kind of fucked up backward structure we're looking at. Finally, Riley states he won't debate people because he gets too many comments. Oh, that's nice. That's the absolutely only piece of this that I agree with. That's it. I get it. I get being too busy. I do, actually. But it does seem to me that he knows how flimsy his argumentation is, and he just doesn't want to talk about it because he knows that he would get wrecked. Look, I know it must be extremely painful as a trans person to be turned down because your gender doesn't meet your prospective partner's preferences. But I have to ask, homie, do you understand how sex works? I think you played this game in preschool. It's called What Shape Fits in What Hole. If you've got an oval and he's got an oval and the only hole you've got is a star, do you see how this could be a turnoff, honey? Again, I know it's hard. Let's look at these trans women on the beach who inevitably get turned down for being trans, despite the fact that they're both cute and fit. But they both have dicks.
So not to be like forward or anything, but like, do you think we're cute?
Most definitely. And me,
Really?
gorgeous.
I think
You
you both
ladies
are very
are
attractive.
gorgeous. We should hook up sometime, hang out, you know?
Really?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, we
Always
should
here.
like get our numbers.
Sure thing. So do I just put you in here as beautiful?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
So when the guys found out the girls were trans, things changed.
That's it. Silence. Like nothing from them again. In a lot of ways, I don't like telling a guy because once I tell them, it's like all respect goes out the window. Straight guys just can't get over you having the male parts.
Look, I get it. Trust me. Well, I don't really get it personally, but I understand. Chopping off your sausage is an enormous decision that must weigh heavy on the minds of trans people. But if you are sure and you're positive you're trans and you've been through all of the other steps, and this is the only way we currently have to treat you, again, I wish we could just give you a pill. Why would it upset you when people of the opposite sex or even the same sex don't want to bang you as long as your outward presentation is not reflective of the thing you keep in your tighty whities? Sex, Riley. This deals with two sets of genitals clashing together. And while as a pre-genital surgery male to female, you might find someone down for a lady with a dick, and similarly as a female to male woman with a vagine, you might find someone into butches, these people are rare. And the most common thing you're gonna get, yep, they're fetishists. Does that suck? Maybe. But newsflash leftists, life isn't fair. I think that's the whole problem with the left. They absolutely cannot understand this basic concept that life isn't fair. And nothing we can ever do will make life fair. Life will never be fair because the universe isn't fair. Because the whole concept of uniformity and stability is a complete and utter piece of nonsense in a chaotic universe. And we live in a chaotic universe. Randomness happens. Life will never be fair, leftists. Never, ever, ever. You can not achieve that. And the fact that you even think it's a goal, it just illustrates how mentally fucked you are. You cannot ever create total equality. It can't happen. Not in the universe that we live in. Maybe in a fantasy universe, but not this one. Along with that, you can't control how people feel. You will never be able to control emotions unless you start putting fucking shit in the water, making the frogs gay and stuff. This is my point, okay? You don't own anyone else's body, and you don't get to dictate what people find attractive. If you're ugly, you're ugly. I'm sorry. I know it sucks. But guess what? There are other ugly people who will probably find you attractive and be happy to be with you. Okay, let me give one last anecdotal because I've given so many in this video. Okay, so in high school, all the girls had a crush on this guy. We'll call him Trevor. He was athletic and tan and had frosted tips. He was a total heartthrob. Me, well, I was a very late bloomer and I was more concerned with Star Trek than boys until I was probably about 17 or 18. So yeah, the first guy I had a crush on, well, it was not Trevor. I'll put it this way. I had a crush on this other dude who was a Spock Vulcan-looking motherfucker who was like 7 feet tall and probably one of the Jewiest people you've ever seen in your life. I was such a spurg that I asked him to prom not even by putting a note in his locker. No. I had a friend. I begged a friend of mine to put a note in his locker asking him to prom. That's the level of autism I was at. He didn't talk to me for about 3 weeks, and then later I saw him at prom where he revealed to me that he was gay and apologized for turning me down, as well as introducing me to his twinky little boyfriend. Was I upset that I singled out the gay Jew as my first ever romantic interest? No, because I'm not a sociopath like Riley Dennis and all these fat activists who think men must fondle their roles or be hung. Anyway, I think I made most of my points. You can't determine who's attracted to you. The very concept is an utter absurdity. In the long run, we will all end up with people who look sort of like us and who are of similar levels of attraction to us, unless we have something, really positive to put on the playing field, like a lot of money, generally speaking. But other than that, we're all just out in the field of shit. You gotta take what you get. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Aiden Paladin, Altana Volt.